Excellent. So for those of you joining us now, welcome again. We're going to get started in a minute or two here. So welcome to the Columbia Climate School's MA in Climate and Society virtual information session. And again, joining me here today is Benjamin Pernetta, who is a recent graduate of the MA Climate and Society program. In fact, he graduated this year. And Benjamin's going to be sharing a little bit more about his journey and experiences within the program. And I'll be getting started in a minute or two here as people continue to join the session. And while we wait, as the room continues to fill, if everybody could go ahead that is joining us, I always love to see what a global prospective student population we have and attract. If everybody could go ahead and type in, I think the chat might have been disabled, but feel free to type in the Q&A where you are joining us from. So what city, state, and or country that you might be logged in to join the Zoom session. That's always extremely helpful too. Awesome. Boy, you guys are great. Asheville, North Carolina. Oh, Mike, hey, I'm so glad you're joining. I owe you an email, Mike. Asheville's beautiful. Welcome from Pakistan. Sao Paulo, Brazil. Phenomenal. Atlanta, Georgia. Dario from Paris. Phenomenal. Let's see. LA originally, but now but from Hong Kong. Oh, originally from Hong Kong. Forgive me. Welcome, Lucas. Two from Paris. That's awesome. Nigeria. Great. We have good continent representation right now. Washington, D.C. We were just in D.C. recently, Daniel. All right. Well, that's always exciting to see. Again, we'll give it just one more brief moment just to see. Occasionally people start joining in a little later. Again, for those of you who are joining us now, feel free to type in the Q&A where you are joining us from. It's always fun to see kind of, again, the global interest in Columbia Climate School and the MA in Climate and Society program. I think we still need South America representation. Oh, no, we had Sao Paulo. What am I saying? We had somebody from Brazil, which is great. Afghanistan, welcome. San Diego. California always represents strong. Hello from Malaysia, welcome. All right, excellent. So we'll go ahead and get started now. Again, my name is Alfred Ayub. I'm the Senior Director of Admissions and Marketing. And today we're going to be going over in great detail the MA in Climate and Society program. And joining me today, he's giving up a great deal of his time, and it's very generous of him, is Benjamin Pernetta, who is a recent alum of the MA in Climate and Society program. And Benjamin is going to be sharing his journey in the program and his experiences throughout, kind of interwoven during this session. So, in fact, let me just briefly go over the agenda. Today, we're going to perform a Columbia Climate School overview. We'll then go into kind of the student profile, who is the typical learner in the MA Climate and Society program. And it's not very typical. I want to say it's a very diverse learning community in terms of goals and ambitions, and we'll go into that. We'll then also perform kind of a deep dive into our core climate core, and then also the summer internship, professional development opportunities, and we'll conclude the session with discussing financial aid and, of course, the application process. So we'll wrap up there and of course, have a Q&A toward the end. So without further ado, what I would like to do, though, and introduce Benjamin. Benjamin is currently serving as a senior analyst at Evolved Energy Research in San Francisco, California. Ben obtained 2 degrees, interestingly, from Columbia University, having completed his undergraduate degree in history from Columbia College, and most recently here at Columbia Climate School, graduating at the MA Climate and Society in 2023. But prior to joining the MA program, Ben was serving in the U.S. Army as an armor officer. His studies focused on using spatial analysis to examine renewable energy development, resources, and climate impacts. And over the summer, and he'll talk about his experiences, but he actually pursued 2 distinct internships in the summer of 2023, including with the United Nations Office of the Special Advisor on Africa, and also as a research fellow with the current organization with which he works for today. Benjamin, could you share with us just a little bit like kind of about your climate story. I know I gave your bio, high level bio, but what led to your interest in the MA Climate and Society program? You know, having been an undergraduate history major, serving in the Army, really fascinating. Tell us a little bit about your climate story.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you for having me. And Alfred, it's great to be here. I remember looking or listening to one of these panels 2 years ago, I guess, and it's super helpful. It was really informational and a great way to sort of get introduced to the program I would eventually join. And yeah, so my climate story, I haven't really got a good grasp on how to tell the entire thing, but I think um, it's sort of like you sort of got at non-traditional, but I think what sort of grounds my interest and what grounded my interest in the MA in Climate and Society program is sort of the importance of service and the importance of understanding the science behind the climate crisis and how we can sort of use our energy to combat it and to do our part in stopping climate change, but also making sure that the world that exists after we hopefully succeed is one that's better and more just. So yeah, I did my undergrad in history at Columbia while also doing a concentration in sustainable development. So I did have some experience with some of the hard sciences, some resource science, a little bit of this sort of climate science side through the Earth Institute back then. But then following that, because I'm sort of very been always drawn to service and sort of using my skills and sort of what I've learned in um, positions where you're working for other people or trying to do some good. I joined the military and I was an officer. I did ROTC. And I think that was a really great experience to sort of see a totally different world from Columbia University and from, I grew up in Berkeley, California, a very different side of America, a different side of the world as well. I was able to go internationally. And I think it also taught me a lot about human systems, understanding how to critically think, how to problem solve, how to work with people, how to work in large bureaucratic organizations, of which, again, many are trying to combat climate change, but that is a challenge in and of itself is to work in one of those organizations and sort of effectively solve problems. And then I think towards the end of my time there, I was thinking back to growing up in California, where nature and being outside was always such a strong part of my upbringing, such a strong part of who I am, and being very connected to the environment, and just seeing again more and more the crisis unfolding around us. And I think that sort of drew me into climate and society and understanding how to work more in this field. It's sort of, and I think many, I'm sure of the participants and many people our age and older and younger understand that this is kind of the fight of our generation. This is the fight of our lives. There are many, the world is obviously full of terrible things going on and beautiful and great things. But I think for me, at least personally, chief among them is climate change. It is the destruction it's causing globally. And so I think that's what really pulled me into the program and sort of now I'm jumping all around, but going back to my
Right.
undergrad, my
Yeah.
focus in history was with modern Africa. And I think doing that
That's right. I
alongside
remember
sustainable,
that
yeah,
tie-in. Yes.
doing that alongside sustainable development was a really interesting sort of two perspectives, whereas the development perspective sees sort of one way of studying places and sort of engaging with people in history as a very different one. And I think that was sort of interesting to compare those together. But all the while, especially with the study of modern Africa and African studies, um, the climate transition and energy transitions and development is very, very important and forefront in a lot of the study. And how do you achieve a just transition? How do you work with nations who want to grow their energy portfolios and want to prosper, but also are intensely feeling the impacts of climate change that other nations have sort of wrought upon the world.
Right.
Um, and so I think bringing all that together, bringing my experience with human systems, with social studies, and sort of wanting to understand the climate science better and wanting to understand energy systems and physical systems all together brought me to the Climate and Society program, where I think one of the really strong benefits was having this great interdisciplinary, diverse student body, diverse sort of uh, understanding of education and different directions you can go with it, and sort of being able to bring all of that together into this incredibly important arena of combating climate change sort of pulled me in, and I stuck with it, and I'm really glad I sort of did it and where I am now.
That's phenomenal. Yeah, thank you. And again, Ben's going to continue. Ben will be sharing more throughout, but hopefully that's a helpful like kind of anchor in his story and how he came to the MA Climate and Society program. We're going to learn a little bit more about what he's working on now and how he kind of explored his electives and of course the core while in the program. So now I want to touch on specifically specifically Columbia Climate School itself. So Columbia University, of course, is a global leader in climate and sustainability education at both the undergraduate and graduate level. And the climate school was developed to provide this interdisciplinary knowledge base for future climate leaders to work in business, in government, in civil society. And again, we want to stress that this is definitely a very interdisciplinary school and topic in and of itself. We need people from various professional backgrounds, various industries, various sectors to combat the climate crisis. But to give you kind of an idea of the history of the school itself, you know, when you say Columbia University, you're referring to a research institution that's considered by many to be a blueprint of research universities here in the United States. Within Columbia University, there's over 20 different schools, the majority of them being professional graduate schools, the newest of which is Columbia Climate School. So it was announced in 2020 and officially launched in 2021. But what I want to always emphasize whenever we discuss kind of the history of the climate school is that by just saying that, it makes it sound incredibly new, so to speak. And it was by no means developed out of thin air. In fact, Ben gave a little bit of a preview when he referenced the Earth Institute, interestingly. But I always like to note Columbia Climate School's kind of true inception began with Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, which is a 189-acre campus. It's located about 20 miles north of Morningside Heights. You can see it there on the lower left corner, right on the Hudson River. Many of our research centers are housed there. Many of our students, in fact, perform departmental research assistantships there. And it's actually ranked the #1 scientific institution in the US devoted to earth and environmental sciences. There's over 300 PhD level researchers based out of Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory. And they've been extremely instrumental, especially as it relates to the study of climate. In fact, in the 1970s, one of our Lamont faculty members is the first person to have coined the term global warming in an academic paper. So I always like to say Lamont is definitely the tip of the spear as it relates to the study of earth and environmental sciences as well as climate. And then the Earth Institute. And the Earth Institute was formed in the 1990s, specifically with a focus on both climate as well as sustainability, which is just a key pillar. And within the Earth Institute, it has over 750 environmental scientists, policy managers, lawyers, engineers, all working on issues of sustainable development and environmental management. The Earth Institute now has been fully folded within Columbia Climate School. I also like to note that. So again, the Climate School did not develop out of thin air by any means. It was built on the shoulders of Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, the Earth Institute, and now, of course, Columbia Climate School. In terms of the MA Climate and Society program, I also should note this program, interestingly, is not new either, in that it was not established in 2021. This program actually was launched in 2005 under the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, and it's specifically to train students to understand and address the impacts of climate variability and change on society and the environment. We really want students to be able to communicate the climate crisis to many different constituents, to implement climate information. And as Ben, noted, we take a very interdisciplinary approach to addressing the climate crisis. Many of our students come to this program with a very specific interest in mind as it relates to climate. And then we have some students that are extremely exploratory, which we will discuss as we further discuss the elective journey. And then, something else that we definitely pride ourselves on, certainly with me speaking from an admissions lens, is not only are you getting phenomenal resources at Columbia University through our faculty and excellent professional development opportunities through the Climate School. But also, you're going to learn from one another in your cohort. So we definitely intentionally attract a very diverse learning community. And you can think of that from multiple lenses, geographic, professional, academic. We want students from very different backgrounds all coming together to tackle the climate crisis and explore the climate core together. So speaking of which, now let's talk a little bit about the students. So this is the cohort that just matriculated in fall 2023. Again, I just want to note Ben matriculated in fall 22, so his cohort looks slightly different, but we welcomed 103 students in the fall 2023. Our international student ratio increased. We're now 40% international, and 23 countries of citizenship represented. In addition, we have 18 states represented among our domestic students. And something else we're very proud of is approximately 15% of our incoming class are their first in the family to attend college. They identify themselves as first-generation college students. Also, the average age in this cohort for fall 2023 entry is 26 years old. I will say, to add some additional nuance, about 20% of our incoming class brought 5 or more years of professional work experience, although we do have a significant number of students. I met with several students even for one-on-one appointments yesterday, for example. We have a significant number that come right from undergrad to grad as well. So we don't have any minimum years of work experience associated with the program. And then finally, the final data point I like to point out is in the lower right corner, kind of education backgrounds within the MA Climate and Society program. Interestingly, just over 2/3 of our students are coming to us with social science backgrounds. And that's not historically what the case for the program. The program at its inception used to attract about 2/3 STEM backgrounds. But we've seen over the last 3 to 4 years a significant increase among individuals that are looking to either pivot into the climate space or those who have social science backgrounds and see great opportunity within the climate space. So we've seen a growing interest, and as the cohort grows, a growing interest among students with social science backgrounds. And then the remaining third are typically students with more the classic engineering or natural and earth science backgrounds. In terms of the Climate and Society program, if you're looking at it from a full-time program, and classically it was designed to be full-time, although we do have a part-time opportunity, which I'll discuss shortly, you're looking at a 34 credit hour program with 22 of the credits being made up of this climate core. And then you have 12 credits of electives. So in terms of the Columbia Climate School's Climate Core, you begin the fall semester with the Dynamics class, Dynamics of Climate Variability and Change. This is going to be the classic course that teaches you the science behind climate change. So if somebody stops you on the sidewalk and says, "Do you believe in climate change?" and you say yes, and then they say why, you will be able to answer the why. And we want you to also make sure to add a layer to this, that you're able to communicate the why to, again, various constituents, whether it's somebody that has a deep background in science or somebody that's never been exposed to a physics class before. You would be able to answer that why. So Dynamics is going to give you that background. Then we have the two classic kind of pillars of addressing the climate crisis. We have a climate change mitigation course taught by Dr. Melissa Lott, and then a climate change adaptation course taught by Dr. Lisa Dale. We were very intentional about offering mitigation and adaptation in the same semester so that both of these ideas can kind of coalesce with one another in this semester. They do utilize a great deal of case studies. Adaptation specifically utilizes case studies relating to specific countries, and you form group projects around those countries. And then mitigation, Dr. Melissa Lott is very intentional about bringing in guest speakers from various regions of the world to address how they approach mitigation. And then for the spring semester, we have the additional kind of more challenging STEM course, Quantitative Methods for Climate Applications. That's going to be a 4 credit hour class. There is within that 4 credits, a 1 credit hour lab. And this is going to be the classic data course, so to speak. I call it your climate jobs course because, as we all know, data is king. It impacts us in every industry and every sector, and that's the same goes with climate data. So this is going to be utilizing R as your computer language. How do you kind of tell a story with large climate data sets? How do you interpret it and again communicate it? And then finally, you'll have to take an applications in climate and society course in the spring semester as well, which is kind of largely a seminar style class, bringing in a large group of guest speakers and from different industries. I always remember the class that I attended for applications in climate and society was relating to climate communication and climate journalism, where they brought in practitioners from Washington Post, NPR, Vox. How do you tell climate stories? Kind of what data visualization tools you use to share the climate crisis. How do you inspire interest without inspiring panic? It was actually a very fascinating course. Ben, I don't know if you remember that one, but I think that was in your cohort. And then the final semester is I always say, like, transforming concepts into practice. It's taking what you've learned and actually applying them either through an internship or alternatively through a consulting capstone. Interestingly, we have had some students that have actually pursued both. They've done an internship as well as a capstone. So what I'd love to do is many students take a pause here. I'd love to ask Ben some perspective on the climate core, but a lot of students that I meet with and are social science backgrounds, and they sometimes have anxiety around coming to a program like this that clearly has many science courses built in intentionally for you to understand the science behind the climate change. Can you tell us how you navigated dynamics and quantitative methods, what resources were in place? Tell us your overall experience with the core. The core has evolved a little bit since Ben joined, but the major themes of it obviously remain.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think the first thing to say is that anyone who is worried about it being too scientifically difficult or too much STEM because you have a humanities or a social science background, I think you should definitely not be afraid of that. The program is designed to help and take care of you if you don't have a lot of background in STEM, if you haven't taken physics courses or chemistry courses. It's definitely not something to be worried about. It's obviously something to be cognizant of. You might have to work a little bit harder or do a little bit extra work that you're not comfortable with or that you're not familiar with, but it's not something that should sort of scare you away or make you not want to apply or be a part of the program. On the flip side, I think it's also important, and this was something that was personally important to me, that it's not academically rigorous. These are not like sort of courses that are just meant to check the box. They are definitely going to give you the scientific understanding. And if you do have a background in STEM, if you do have a background in meteorology or physical science or environmental science, you will still learn something and be challenged by these courses. I think so. Just speaking from my own background, I obviously had mainly my background was in humanities. I had a little bit of like social science and a little hard science through my sustainable development concentration. I'd taken some courses that sort of looked at earth sciences and climate science. So I had a bit of an understanding of what the courses would be like, but I didn't have an entire degree focused on climate. And for me, both dynamics, which is the more physical systems focused course, and quant, which is like Alfred said, the more data and computer language or understanding how to parse through climate data course. Both of them I found very accessible with a little bit of work, but really not too difficult. The TAs and professors are incredibly helpful. There's always office hours that you can go to. A lot of times during the beginning of the year, they're very full with people just sort of working out and figuring out what the areas that they don't know as much about. But they're both very accessible at the same time, still academically rigorous, and you will still be challenged and learn about the climate system in a way that allows you to engage with it and understand as an expert rather than just a layperson getting information online per se. And I think that sort of connects to like my experience coming in. I didn't have a ton of experience working in the climate space. I did have some professional experience, obviously, but the military is a far cry from a climate organization. So I think that side of it, again, also was really great to interact with people who do have 10 years, 15 years of working in the climate space, working in climate finance, people who have worked at meteorological institutes, and sort of working together with all these different students was another great part of the program, because you're going to be in the same classes with them, and you can bring, if you've worked in the climate space, you might have a better understanding of some of these problems versus someone who has not, but maybe someone who has not can bring experiences on other things to the table. And so bringing those together and working together as student groups, like often we would get together and work on assignments together, obviously where permitted by the professors, but that's another great thing about the program, is that you will have a lot of other students who are in the same boat, and we're all trying to learn together. And again, my experience, and I think the experience of most, if not all of my peers in the cohort, was nobody was left behind, nobody was left out. And sort of everyone was able to make it through these STEM courses and learn and engage in a really meaningful way.
That's awesome. Thanks, Ben. And guys, feel free to ask again, Ben, questions. We're going to totally address any questions you have, especially for a student perspective or recent graduates perspective toward the end of the session. And then something I just want to touch on briefly now as well is this kind of Climate and Society part-time option. So we do now offer, in the admissions application, you can indicate if you do wish to enroll part-time. If you did decide to be a part-time student in the MA Climate and Society, it goes from being a one-year program to a two-year program. It's important to stress that. It then becomes a two-year program. And something else I just want to address is that the program is, while we have some evening courses available, this is a daytime program. So the majority of your climate core courses would be offered during the day. Obviously, it's an on-campus program, so you'd have to work something out with your employer to ensure that you're able to balance it. But we do have a part-time option. So students enrolling in the part-time program generally include kind of one or more of the following profiles. So they're people with demonstrated significant work experience in climate or a climate-adjacent space, working professionals currently in any space that can reasonably assert that they can readily apply the MA Climate and Society program to their current work, or to easily transition to climate or a related field where they can apply the program to that profession. So really the part-time program, when you're applying to be a part-time student, you really should have a very strong reason for it, largely with a professional lens, largely with that you're a working professional, and unfortunately it's not possible for you to enroll in the program full-time given your full-time role. That doesn't mean that if you're a seasoned professional, let's say you're not working right now, but you're looking to pivot into climate, that might also be possible. But if you have any questions about that, we could also have a one-on-one conversation as well. So again, there is a part-time option. We're transparent about it on our website. And you would go from a one-year program to essentially a two-year program. Just bearing that in mind. And like an example, I'll give you another example. Let's say an adjacent, it says demonstrated significant work experience in a climate or climate adjacent space. Let's say that you're a journalist with Bloomberg and you report on finance. And let's say that, hey, you just went to the most recent COP in Dubai and you're talking about climate finance now pretty consistently and what an important area that is. And now you need to cover the story, but you don't have a climate background. This would be a perfect program for you to take to kind of cover now climate finance stories. That's just an example. You know, again, you work in journalism, but could be a great fit to being a part-time student in this program. Now I want to talk about climate school electives, and just noting that, you know, the Columbia Climate School is constantly evolving and growing, quite frankly. And for example, the electives within the climate school that Ben had, now there were more for his cohort versus the cohort before, for example, versus now the cohort this year. So we're only adding electives as we move along year over year. For example, we have a climate change decision making. We had an environmental justice, a legal framework for advocacy. We're going to have now 3 climate justice electives this coming year. So those who are entering fall 24, we're really excited about that. We had a climate change and disaster management elective that we launched recently. Now we have a specialization in it, strategic communications for climate change as well. In fact, we launched last year. And Ben, did you go to Colombia, the country? Did you do that travel trip? I should have asked you before.
I didn't, but I have a bunch of friends who did, and they all really enjoyed it. So
so we actually partnered with the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning and Preservation on this this travel course, Imagining Climate Resilience and Justice, Ridge to Reef, Colombia. We brought a group of students to to, you know, Colombia, the South American nation, that is, for that class. And in fact, this year we're going to do another travel course with the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning and Preservation. And I believe they're going to go to Puerto Rico and Jamaica. I think it's going to be a 2-country trip. But not only do we have our own electives that we could continue to build upon, but we also have electives that are available. And I think this is a huge value add, being a student at Columbia University, is the idea of cross-registration. And that within the MA Climate and Society, and this goes back to my earlier talking point about you can be as exploratory as you like or as direct as you like, you can in the MA Climate and Society program, you can count towards your electives any graduate level course at Columbia's graduate schools, provided that they allow cross-registration. So we have students that take courses at the School of International and Public Affairs, the Mailman School of Public Health, Columbia Law School, School of Professional Studies. In fact, the Sustainability Management and Sustainability Science programs that are partner programs with us, they're embedded there. We have a lot of students that take sustainability management courses, for example. The Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, of course, that's where our Department of Earth and Environmental Sciences are. And then finally, the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning and Preservation, or Columbia Engineering. For example, they have a carbon management program where we've seen some students cross-register. So this is just a short list of professional schools our students have cross-registered. But what I always like to do now is pause. And I think like this is the $1 million question, Ben, that comes up all the time. Certainly whenever I host panels or I have current students or alumni join, they always want to know, what did you take and how did you approach it? So how did you approach cross-registration? I'm just curious, were you kind of like, hey, I'm going to take a potpourri of classes or a smattering, or were you pretty directed? Did you have a specific vision in mind? I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. Yes. I think to your question into that they want, I kind of trended in the middle of like between knowing what I wanted, but then also wanting to pivot and explore a little bit. So again, like I talked about before, my background being more humanities and social science, what really drew me to the program was more the STEM and hard science side of it. And so that's what I was interested in pursuing more. But at the same time, I wanted to explore within that a little bit as well. So I think the ability to cross-register and take electives across all of Columbia schools is perhaps one of the strongest, if not the strongest part, or one of the strongest parts of the Climate and Society program. I think it was like wonderful. It really, really allowed me to sort of get at what I wanted. And so essentially, I took courses mostly in STEM and mostly graduate level, either earth science and atmospheric science courses or some engineering courses as well. So I think being able to do that coming from my background and not necessarily having those was an awesome opportunity. And so that was sort of how I approached it, was looking at specifically courses in like graduate atmospheric science classes, and then also courses with like GIS, geographic information systems, engineering
Yes.
for sustainable development or for renewable energy. And so that's the path I took on. And again, I can't stress enough how great it is having like the opportunity to cross-register. Once you get into registration and you see you see the climate school electives, and then you see the hundreds and hundreds of other ones across the entire spectrum, it's overwhelming, but it's also really exciting to see all these different paths you can take with it. And like so a few of the courses that I took, I know if I can't really pick one of my favorite cross-register one, because I enjoyed basically every single course I took. But I think to give sort of a cross section of different courses, I took in the fall a course called it wasn't dynamics. It was basically like a graduate level intro to atmospheric science. But it was it's for all of the PhDs who are doing climate science or atmospheric science. So it was pretty heavy math, like a decent amount of calculus, which again, I hadn't done in 5 years. And what I had done was relatively basic, but I was still able to sort of hang with it. And it was augmented by the fact that I was doing dynamics as part of the climate core curriculum. So having those together was really awesome opportunity to sort of understand what I was doing in dynamics and then take it the next step further to understand, okay, I know what the Coriolis effect or the Coriolis force is. how does it work mathematically? How does the rotation of the Earth actually cause it? Where is it stronger towards why is it stronger towards the poles? What is the impact on climate? And understand the sort of these physical processes using calculus, using mathematics was an awesome sort of augmentation to my experience with the climate core curriculum and sort of what I wanted to get a more in-depth understanding of climate science. And then in the spring, I took a bunch of other electives and sort of two of which one of was a GIS course in the engineering graduate department. And so this was just an awesome, it's something that I'm really, it's what I do now, and I can get into that later, but it's something that I find is sort of the lens through which I engage with the climate crisis, which is the geographic element, the spatial element to it. And so between doing R in quant and then also doing GIS in the fall or in the spring, it was sort of an awesome way to understand how to analyze the impacts of climate, how to also understand mitigation and where can renewable energy be cited. And the professor, I think he still teaches it, Yuri Gorokovich, is just like a great, super supportive professor. He helped me with my fellowship in the summer. He's still sending emails about job opportunities, even though I've been graduated for several months and haven't taken a course in almost a year. So that was awesome. And then on the other side, basically the only one social science / humanities elective I took in my entire time was with a course at SIPA at the International Public Affairs School called Africa Development Environment and Politics. And this was, again, just sort of great to return to what I had studied in undergrad a bit, what I had a little bit more experience with, but now understanding some more of the impact science part of it really allowed me to engage with it on a different level. And it was really cool to sort of be there with SIPA students who are much more on the policy side, but sort of be there as someone who understands more of the science and sort of work with them and listen to them. And the professor was really, again, engaging. So I think overall, I was able to delve very deeply into the sciences, which I hadn't done as much before. But at the same time, the spectrum of courses that are out there is huge. I was able to, again, most of my courses, I think of I want to say about 10 elective courses over the course of the year I took, 9 of them or 8 of them were STEM, but the few humanities or social science ones were really, really great additions to that. And like Alfred said, you can take courses from any school, and that's like such a strong point for this program.
That's excellent. Yeah, and you know, Ben, I must be misremembering, forgive me. Columbia Law School, I know, co-hosted a course with us this last fall. Did you take that with Professor Gerard by chance?
I didn't, mainly because I had
Okay.
actually taken a course with him in my undergrad, and he's
I
also like
see. That's what, okay.
again, a fantastic, phenomenal professor. Like anyone who's taken
Yes.
that course will rave about how great it is. So
Yes,
yeah.
I do remember that. Yeah, one of your fellow peers, I remember, Skylar Norse, I think was talking about how great that course was. That's
Mhm.
awesome. Yeah, so now moving on from the electives, I do want to know, you know, here we are, we're talking about this idea of exploration and really, you know, I think Ben's a great example of somebody that was able to take a really a wide variety of courses. We do have some students that through kind of feedback indicated that they would like a little bit more, let's say, of a curated list of courses, perhaps. So this is the first year, the fall 2023 cohort. We piloted something called areas of specialization. And we currently have 2 areas of specialization. These will be listed in your admissions application. In fact, a couple weeks ago, our Office of Admissions did host a special areas of specialization information session where we invited our faculty administrators from both areas of specialization to talk about the opportunities within specifically disaster risk management, which is in partnership with the National Center for Disaster Preparedness, and then finally climate and the built environment, which is in partnership with the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation. What I like to note about specializations is they provide students with an opportunity to focus in a particular area of study and gain tools and knowledge relevant to that specific to a specific career path. So in order to pursue the specialization, 12 of your elective credits, 9 of them would have to be made up of specific courses that either fall within disaster risk management or climate in the built environment. Our admissions application does ask if you're interested in a specialization, yes or no. By no means does that impact your admissions decision, though. I just want to note that by selecting a specialization, it doesn't make it more difficult, or vice versa. By not selecting it, it doesn't make it more challenging for admissions by any means, shape, or form. It just gives us a data point to understand, oh, you are potentially interested in this specialization. Interestingly, for those students that are admitted and decide to matriculate to our program, we are going to ask them to again declare a specific specialization about a month before the start of the semester. So it's a nice to know if you are interested in a specialization in our admissions application. And we recorded it maybe about 2 weeks ago, that session, and we're going to be sharing it. We just got posted to the Columbia Climate School YouTube. It's public, so if you want to take a peek today, but we're going to be emailing it shortly as well, that deep dives into those specific areas. And then finally, we have the summer. The summer internship is, I would say, historically was always the most popular option because it used to only be an internship for the summer. We actually launched the capstone opportunity during the pandemic year. So summers, again, this idea of transforming concepts into practice, we've had students that have pursued internships in a variety of public, private, non-sector spaces, ranging from, USDA Climate Hub, World Food Programs, the New York Mayor's Office, the International Research Institute for Climate and Society is one of our major research centers here at Columbia Climate School. We've had a number of students that have performed internships there. And then alternatively, we have capstones. During the summer semester, we actually allow students to specifically work with in small groups with an organization that's coming to Columbia Climate School with a specific problem they hope to address, or a group of students to research. So for example, the United Nations Climate and Environment Program came to our program a couple of years ago, and they were seeking climate-proofing food systems in the global south, assessing investments in research and innovation for resilient smallholder agriculture. We've also, for example, my personal favorite, I don't know, Ben, did you attend the capstone briefings? I don't know if you did or did. I attended those.
I didn't, but
yeah. So Ben, we're going to hear about Ben's experience in the summer, but WFLA TV and Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory partnered together. That's one of their local stations in the Tampa Bay area, and I'm from the Tampa Bay area. So that was a fun presentation to watch, specifically to assess Tampa Bay area's vulnerability compared to other cities along the West Coast, and specifically kind of glean an explanation of the city's vulnerability under current climate conditions. So that was very interesting to kind of hear students discuss that. I will say this, that students have an opportunity, interestingly, to pursue an internship or a capstone, or alternatively both. And if you did decide to do both an internship and a capstone, the capstone would be the only credit-bearing opportunity then. So the 6 credits would be from the capstone. But I want to just pause there. Ben, can you share with me a little bit about your summer experience? Was actually quite robust, as I read in your bio, but can you share with us your kind of experience in the summer, how you pursued those internships, how you found those opportunities?
yeah, definitely. So I think in the spring, I started sort of looking for opportunities in the summer. I was really interested in doing an internship. The career officer at the Climate and Society program, Gerald, they're wonderful. They will take care of you and give you all sorts of really great advice. They know so many people out there in the climate space and sort of can help you look for opportunities and just understand how to better market yourself and understand what you're looking for. And so both working with them, but also just doing some of my own research, I came across both. They put me in touch with someone who worked at the United Nations in the Office of the Special Advisor on Africa. And then at the same time, I was also looking at, or I found an opportunity through them with the place I work now, Evolved Energy Research, which is a energy research consulting firm. And so as spring semester progressed, I was sort of applying to these positions. And I ended up starting at the United Nations in March and just continuing that all the way through September, more at a part-time level. But at the same time, then starting in the summer, I undertook full-time a research fellowship with Evolved Energy Research. So it was a little bit packed because on top of that, I also took an elective during the summer too,
Oh,
which
that's right.
yeah.
Actually, and Ben's bringing up a great point. So the 6 credits, we have a flat tuition rate model at Columbia Climate School. So you can take up to 20 credits each semester. You're paying the same tuition, including in the summer. And we do have some students that, well, we have one right here that's a very ambitious. So tell us about, actually, what elective did you take in the summer? I'm just
Yeah,
curious.
so I took it was one of the sustainability management courses, I believe, or maybe it was
Okay.
sustainability science. But it was
Okay.
a sustainable forestry management course, which was relatively relaxed and sort of a good uh combination with my two internships as well. But I will say, I mean, I think the flat tuition aspect is really great because it does allow you to take as many courses up to that 20 credit limit, which is awesome. And so I was really keen to to take advantage of that and sort of get as much as I could for the tuition amount. But
Yeah.
sometimes I would say it's worth also understanding your limitations. It was definitely a lot of work during the summer doing both of those alongside the elective. Um, but overall, I think it was a great experience and sort of doing both of them, which sort of went in different directions. At the United Nations, I was working obviously with the special advisor in Africa, more focused on projects in Africa and sort of writing reports for decision makers, for leaders in African nations on opportunities in solar, but also potential opportunities with small modular reactors. And so that was sort of just understanding the multilateral component and working again back in a large bureaucratic organization that is the UN, and again just being able to network and meet other people, other interns working there was an awesome experience. And then on the other side, much more the technical and modeling side, I was working at Evolved and doing my own research project, which was really inspiring and sort of one of the pulling factors for me pursuing this opportunity was essentially they provided me with the space, the time and space to do a research project, sort of in a topic of their choosing, but I could sort of take it in the direction I wanted. And so it was looking at the viability of energy parks in the United States, which is essentially co-locating high quality wind and high quality solar resources with clean ammonia production and using GIS mapping to look at the areas that are most effective for this. So it combined my understandings of modeling skills. It combined some of my climate science courses and then a lot of my GIS, which was sort of, again, the direction I really wanted to go through the program, and bringing those all together into like a technical report that they published. And then ultimately that obviously led to my full-time position where I'm working now with them. But doing sort of both of those together and then also still being able to come onto campus and take a course was a lot, but it was also a really, really cool opportunity to sort of be in different directions. Like I said, I came into the climate school generally knowing what I wanted and wanting to pivot into STEM and into climate science, but also wanting to explore a little bit. So I think having that opportunity to explore between the internships and between the electives, but also knowing I want to get more into the modeling side
Yes.
was really awesome.
That's great. That is great. So yeah, I didn't even realize that was a perfect pivot too to talk about like now professional development. Funny enough, with discussing Gerald specifically. So there are phenomenal professional resources and development opportunities specifically within Columbia Climate School. So we do have a dedicated career placement officer. In fact, they just got a promotion, which is phenomenal. So now they're their director. And we're bringing on a second professional to work in the career space, which we're really excited about. They host a variety of employer info sessions and talks with students. In fact, if you do check out the Columbia Climate School YouTube channel, they just recently hosted some talks, for example, on entering sustainability consulting, for example. One of our recent alums was who's at Boston Consulting Group, talks about her experiences transitioning to that industry. So definitely check out the Climate School YouTube channel. Actually, check it out in general because there's a lot of fun videos that we upload. We also host the All Ivy Environmental and Sustainable Development Career Fair. This is not new. This has been around for 15 years now. Ben, probably you might remember that from undergrad. I don't know. But it's
I
the
do.
it's the All Ivy Environmental Sustainable Career Fair. We bring nearly 1,000 students to campus across the Ivy League. Nearly 100 employers will descend upon Morningside Heights, always in February. We're really excited. It's going to be an on-campus event, returns to on-campus this year. In addition, we have an exclusive job list and an alumni directory. We have the Earth Institute internship program. And then finally, we host something called sustainability skills seminars pretty much once a month throughout the academic year. And they range anywhere from like, hey, LEED certification or climate communication to, sustainability consulting, for example. So these are kind of professional development seminars that we host typically on a weekend or in the evening to make sure as many students can attend. We bring practitioners to speak. In terms of our class of 2022, so we haven't published the 23 class employment results yet, although they will be coming out soon. The class of 22, you can see this spread kind of. We have about 30% of our students from that graduating cohort of around 85 students entered the NGO space. The public sector made about 16%, academia 15%, and then finally the private sector made up about 40%. And in fact, Damaris, who's helping me with the Q&A. Damaris, if you don't mind, could you copy and paste in the chat the employer section for the MA Climate and Society, because we have this pie chart has like kind of an interaction, so to speak, where you click on, let's say, the private sector, and then you can see the job titles and the roles and the organizations that students that did go on to the private sector, where they landed, so to speak, or if you wanted to check out the NGO space. So we'll put that in the chat for you guys to explore. I will say that the MA Climate and Society program has seen a significant shift in industry and sectors where our students land. Previously, it was a majority of the NGO, for example, where our students went. The private sector only made up about 15% of our students, if you go back to 2005 and many of the early years. And now we've seen it more than double to 40%. And we're expecting that to only grow, especially with the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act and the private sector really catching up to what policy is dictating. So we only see the private sector share growing. And then here's just a few kind of roles, recent roles our students have gone on to. So a sustainability insight analyst at McKinsey was in the class of 22, geospatial risk analyst at UNICEF, climate data science officer at Michigan State. And then here's kind of a longer list of where our alumni over the years have gone on to work. Again, it really ranges, both public and private sector. So you can see like the city of Seattle, we have an equity and environment initiative program coordinator there. A lot of local cities. You can see the city of Los Angeles as well. But then we also have students at the World Bank currently, for example, or Apple. So now I'm going to go ahead and transition to financial aid, and we'll talk first about fellowships, and then we'll talk about federal and private loans. So I do want to stress that we do offer fellowships within the MA Climate and Society program, specifically Climate and Society fellowships. Just under 50% of our incoming class for the fall 2023 received a Climate and Society fellowship. You're automatically considered for it. It's merit-based. The key here, though, is if you're interested in a Climate and Society fellowship, apply by our priority deadline. Apply by January 15th, 2023. Any of you joining the call today should absolutely apply by January 15th, 2023. So those range anywhere from, again, $10,000 to upwards of $35,000. And if you are interested in the Climate and Society Fellowship consideration, apply by January 15th. Then we also have something called departmental research assistantships. These are $6,000 in total compensation, and we offer typically around 30 departmental research assistantships each year. How it works, though, you are first admitted and you indicate that you'll be joining the program, and then around the month of August we share the departmental research assistantship opportunities that you can apply to, and you would begin those opportunities around late September, early October. I will say that we have more students interested in departmental research assistantships than we have openings. So, for example, this year we had 30 openings and we had around 70 of our students of the 103 students, 70 of them applied. So not everybody can get departmental research assistantships, but it is a phenomenal opportunity if you do get one. And then we also really encourage students to pursue external fellowships. The Graduate School of Arts and Sciences has a website that has external fellowship directory where you can see different organizations and institutions that might provide external fellowships. And in fact, I'm going to ask Damaris also if Damaris doesn't mind to copy and paste. There's a Google Doc, interestingly, that we kind of started putting together this year in the admissions office. Some of our admissions interns have done their own kind of independent research or what they found helpful when they were looking at external fellowships when they were actually researching graduate school. So we're offering this as kind of again, informal. We don't represent these organizations or these websites by any means, but we encourage you to start looking at external fellowships now and start applying for them now. Their deadlines are now, or in fact, in the month of December, January. It's not, you don't have great or promising outcomes if you're looking for external fellowships in the late spring after you've already been admitted. So definitely take a look at that spreadsheet for external fellowships. We have a domestic student tab and we have an international tab for international students. And then there's federal and private loans. And the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences still serves as our Office of Financial Aid, who, so to speak, manages the loan process for our students. So if you're a U.S. citizen or permanent resident going through the federal loan process or the private loan process. And those of you that are joining us that might be international, we do have two organizations that work with International Columbia University students. One's called Empower, the other one's called Prodigy Finance. They're popular options among international students because they do not require a United States cosigner to secure the loans. So that's another opportunity I'll highlight. Now I want to touch on the application process. So the MA in Climate and Society program application, of course, is live and available to start today. If you haven't started an application yet, I definitely encourage you to do so, at the very least to see the questions and the requirements. Now, again, you can log in and log out at your leisure, but the online application process is a holistic review. In it, we will require that you upload a resume. We will also ask for 2 letters of reference. One of the references must be academic if you've been enrolled in a university within the last 5 years. So that's something important to stress. If it's been more than 5 years, your recommendation letters can actually come from professional recommendations. It's not a problem. But if you've been enrolled, let's say, hey, I just graduated 2 years ago from undergrad, then one of the recommendation letters should be academic. Then we will ask that you upload all of your unofficial college transcripts. We only need the unofficial college transcripts to provide an admissions decision. That's something else that's very important. And then we will also ask for a test score only if English is not your native language and was not the language of instruction specifically at your undergraduate university. So let's say, I'll give you an example. Let's say that your native language is Arabic, but you attended the American University of Beirut, where the language of instruction there is solely English. If that's the case, then we would not need a TOEFL or an IELTS or a Duolingo English test. However, if you attended a university where the language of instruction was Arabic and your native language is Arabic, then we would need a either an English language test. And we do have minimum scores for those English language tests because obviously the language of instruction here at Columbia is English, and you have to have a strong English foundation in order to exceed. So we're looking for a 100 on the TOEFL, a 7.5 on the IELTS, and then a 135 on the Duolingo English test. Finally, the statement of purpose is another component and a critical component, in fact. And when you're applying to the MA Climate and Society, we have a specific prompt. It's up to 1,000 words. In this prompt, we want you to share with us your key experiences that have contributed to your commitment to work on climate change issues. In addition, what are your academic and professional goals, and what knowledge and skills are you hoping to develop through your enrollment in the climate school? Finally, why is enrollment in Climate and Society critical in helping you achieve your goals, and which Climate and Society core course are you most excited to complete? It's important to stress that final sentence. Our admissions committee is always interested in understanding which climate core course you're really excited to complete. So give it a little bit of thought. Maybe it's climate adaptation, perhaps it's mitigation, or maybe it's the dynamics course, but give it a little bit of thought. What we want to make sure is that you're just as excited about the climate core as you are about the cross-registration elective journey, so to speak. And again, I want to stress our admissions committee takes a holistic approach when reviewing candidates. There's no formula to this process. And I'll also say that we hosted an application tips and strategies virtual session on last month. I believe it was November 20th. I strongly encourage you to watch that. We had 5 current climate and society students talk about this application process, talk about how they approach the recommendation letter process, how they approach this statement of purpose. So I definitely recommend checking out that application tips and strategies video on YouTube. And I am seeing some hands raised. I'm going to ask that you go ahead and also type your questions in the Q&A. Our application deadlines are priority deadlines January 15th, 2024. Decisions will be released in March. It's highly recommended if you're interested in a climate and society fellowship. And then finally, the final deadlines March 1st, 2024. Again, everybody joining today should absolutely positively take advantage of the priority deadline of January 15th. And I just want to encourage you now to feel free to email us at admissions@climate.columbia.edu as well. And we can also, I host one-on-one info sessions. We're recording this session. We will definitely share a recording with everybody as well after. We'll try to get that up on YouTube in the coming days. But let's go ahead and transition to the Q&A. Forgive me, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'll just go ahead and open it up. And do we see, Damaris, any interesting questions that came in specifically? Let's see here. That's a great question. So the first question that came in relates to, can an international student perform the program part-time? It depends on your circumstances. So international students, by and large, cannot do the program part-time if you're seeking to enroll in this program on an F1 student visa. Now, if you're already working here in the United States on an employer visa, for example, then it's possible that you could be a part-time student. But if you're planning to come to the United States on an F1 student visa, you have to be full-time. Another question, this question is for you, interestingly. Ben, did you look at the sustainability management program out of curiosity, or did you target the climate and society?
Yeah, so I did actually look at the sustainability management one, and I also looked at the sustainability science, which are kind of the 2 other sister programs with climate and society. And I think what really drew me in, and I might be not completely characterizing all 3 of them correctly, but what sort of drew me towards the climate and society one is I think it's a little bit more focused on STEM and a little bit more focused on science than per se the sustainability management program, which is more, as the name suggests, on the management side, the professional application side. But I think between the climate and society program and the sustainability science program, climate and science, it really has its background in the climate modeling in Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, and then in that observatory and LDO also really focuses on how do we take climate impacts and talk about them and bring the science to stakeholders and bring the science to decision makers and sort of look at climate impacts and what does it mean for people, for human systems, for society. So climate and society, as again the name kind of suggests, is that coupling of the science and the impacts of the science on the human systems. And I think that's what sort of pulled me to climate and society versus sustainability management, which again, I'm sure a very wonderful program, but I think perhaps a little bit less in depth on the STEM side and a little bit less on that intersection between physical systems and human systems, which really was important for me.
That's excellent, Ben. Thank you. I couldn't have put it better. One thing I always like to note is they are partner programs because I see a couple now more questions about sustainability science and sustainability management. They're very different, though. They do not have a climate core, for example. Sustainability management and sustainability science, their programs are designed, they're housed within the School of Professional Studies. They are the majority, about 2/3 of their students, I believe, are working professionals. So it's phenomenal from the standpoint you can take courses in the evening and pursue those programs part-time, although they have robust full-time learning communities. But within those content areas, you and another student might have a completely different set of 36 credit hours. They only have 2 required courses of each student: sustainability management, and then their sustainability management capstone. And sustainability science has 3 required courses, one of them being a I believe a statistics course. So they're very different in terms of, are you looking for that kind of climate core? Are you looking for the idea of going through this kind of cohort learning community with the same thematic courses that we believe very strongly? If you're working in the climate space, you should have an anchored understanding and adaptation, mitigation, dynamics, the quantitative methods? Or are you looking for more flexibility in these content areas that can be wildly different? So within each content area, you might have 5 to 6, options, or even more. Sustainability management is, again, the oldest sustainability management in the country. They have over 70 different courses housed within it. And many of our students take advantage through their elective journey. So I hope that is helpful. I saw one of the other questions related to sustainability science. Is it very different from climate and society? And it really is. It's very, very different, the sustainability science versus the MA Climate and Society program. Another question I'm seeing is, William asked a great question. I really appreciate your insight today. Did you find that most students leverage their internships into full-time opportunities? Obviously you did. Ben, you can speak to your experiences specifically. Not everybody does. I can speak more broadly from that standpoint. But there certainly is a track record. Ben, do you want to just add insight into your, I don't want you to speak for everybody, but maybe something you can share for William on that?
Yeah, just quickly. I mean, again, personally, I did, but again, I also spent some time looking outside of my internship just because I was interested in, again, sort of seeing what is out there. But I think to Alfred's point, it does fully depend, which I don't want to make it seem like it's a cop-out answer. But some people do, and it depends on the internship you're doing. A lot of them do have that sort of component to it. But others, they do an internship, and then that's the sort of end of that chapter. But maybe then they use that internship to look at something else with their experiences there, or they do a capstone, and the capstone leads to something. But I think that the sort of underlying point is, with the climate and society, because it includes this sort of required summer component, you are at an advantage, I would say, whereas many people may graduate their master's in the spring, they will be looking for jobs all summer, but won't find something until the fall or winter. With the climate and society, you will be sort of already either doing a capstone or an internship and already have a leg up in many ways. And so it might seem like, oh my God, I'm stressed out in the spring. I have to find an internship or a job and still be doing schoolwork. At the end of the day, come fall, you've had more time that's sort of been structured to look for these positions. And so I think overall it is an advantage.
Excellent. In terms of, Shauna asked a great question that I can handle. Part-time students, are they eligible for fellowships? Unfortunately, not this year, Shauna. We are directing all fellowships specifically to students seeking to be enrolled in the full-time program. So because students are full-time, they are not going to be working during that. And so we are directing all the fellowship funding to students specifically enrolled in the full-time program. Another question that came in is a student in Uganda indicated that they applied for the Columbia University Scholarship for Displaced Scholars, which is very exciting. Columbia Global Centers houses that scholarship application. What's very important, and Columbia Climate School is participating this year, what is very important is that they are 2 different application processes. So you have to apply both to the MA Climate and Society as well as to the Displaced Scholars application. So you're gonna have to submit both applications to be considered for that Displaced Scholar opportunity. And we're very excited about that. Again, it's for students that are displaced students that are refugees. We're excited to be participating in that this year. So just make sure that you're applying to both the MA Climate and Society as well as the separate Displaced Scholars application. Another question that came in relates to is there any, I'm so sorry, is there another question came into being PhDs? Is there anything that would prevent you from being a strong fit for a PhD program? No, I just want to note we have students that have gone on to PhDs at University of California at Berkeley, Columbia University, of course, Yale School of the Environment. We have plenty of students who wish to pursue the academic route have come in and done just that. So, I will say this though, as you know, Ben and I have not discussed a thesis because there is no thesis in this program. This is a professional degree, although we do have students that pursue departmental research assistantships and even research assistantships independently. Somebody in Ben's class, Emily Weaver, interestingly, who now works at the Mailman School of Public Health, Emily pursued not a departmental research assistantship, she did a cold email to a professor at Mailman, performed that internship that ultimately led to a full-time research position. So I also want to just note that as well. Columbia University apartment housing included or guaranteed? So this is interesting. Ben, did you live in apartment housing out of curiosity?
I applied for the Columbia lottery, but did not get it. So I lived off campus nearby.
Yeah, so I'll say this, we only get 10 allotments this year and we had 103 students join, so it's a 10% chance, just to be authentic. But while housing can be tricky in New York City, there's certainly resources that we can provide you in terms of off-campus housing and what how our students usually navigate that process. But typically students independently find housing, and you don't have to live in Manhattan. You can live in Brooklyn, Queens, New Jersey. We've had students commute in from Connecticut, interestingly. The beauty about New York metro area is our public transport, certainly. Is work experience, if I'm interpreting that question correctly, is work experience related to the program? If you're asking, is it required? Work experience is not required in the program, although we have a number of students that do come to the program with work experience, such as Ben, having served in the military, of course. So I just want to stress that the conversation does not end here. It's a continuation. We will be sharing a recording of this session. I am going to also be adding additional one-on-one appointments to my own calendar just to make sure all prospective students can ask questions in the lead up to the January 15th priority deadline. I want to say a huge, huge thank you. Ben, I cannot thank you enough. Ben's in California right now, so it is very early there. So thank you for joining. Thank you for sharing your perspective. And I want to thank all the prospective students that did attend this session as well. You are all there for the greater good. You are all mission driven, and we want to see those applications come in. So if you found that what our learning community is all about is inspiring and a good fit, I encourage you to move forward with an admissions application. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Ben, so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.